Several hours later, Lu Fan and Kin Q arrived at the living room of the Qin villa. While holding the magical staff in one hand, she used the other to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, closed her eyes, and asked him if he had decided which academy he was going to study at. Upon hearing this, Lu Fan, who was standing beside her, turned his head towards her and looked somewhat surprised. She opened her eyes, and while she was starting to blush, she began to look towards the ground and explained that this was something she wanted to know, but then immediately changed her mind and revealed that this was what her father wanted to ask him. According to him, it would be better if she enrolled in the same academy as him so they could team up in the future. Lu Fan turned his body towards her, started looking at her with a joyful gaze, and with a smile, he thought she was right. He had heard that teamwork was the most important thing in the academy. He also remembered that they had already teamed up before, so he decided that if they were going to a secret realm, then she would be his teammate. Upon hearing this, she couldn't help but be somewhat surprised. Lu Fan turned his back to her, slightly turned his body backwards, and with a smile explained to her that he hadn't yet decided which academy he was going to go to. He decided to tell her as soon as he made up his mind. Kin Q straightened her shoulders, started looking at Lu Fan and couldn't help but get nervous. She was so nervous that she began to stammer. She didn't know how many points he had obtained in the trial. If she didn't catch up soon, the power gap between them would only grow larger. She started looking at Lu Fan with a determined look and with a shout let him know that she was going to do everything possible to enroll in the same academy as him. He approached the living room door and slowly began to open it. Then he turned his body slightly towards her, and with a pleasant smile, praised her and asked her to make an effort. Several seconds later, he opened the door and saw that in the living room there were several people sitting patiently waiting for him. Among them 3 were women and 2 were men. He entered the living room, and with a calm look, introduced himself to everyone as Lu Fan. But just before he could finish the sentence, the man wearing a hat stood up, extended his hands towards him, closed his eyes, and with a pleasant smile praised Lu Fan for being an incredible person. He also added that everyone had seen his trial video. The woman sitting next to him, with one hand on the arm of the chair, placed her other hand under her chin and began to look at Lu Fan. She told the others that he was the first dragon master in history. She didn't know if he had any favorite academy in mind, but for her, he was the #1 student in the southern province. The man opened his eyes, began to look at the woman with contempt, and in a serious voice, he asked her not to worry about Lu Fan, as they did not judge students by appearances at the Jiangnan Academy. He also added that they were going to award him an annual scholarship prize of 10 million dragon coins, resources such as medicine and secret realms, all for free. With an aggressive gaze, she started staring at the man and asked him how dare he come to steal from her, the student who had ranked first when in this room was the highest authority of the most prestigious academy in the dragon realm. The man began to look at the woman, clenched his teeth tightly, then his fist, and couldn't help but become enraged. The woman started looking at Lu Fan, extended her hand towards him and explained that in addition to what Jiangnan Academy could offer him, the Northern Academy would offer him 20 million dragon coins per year and access to the secret realms in the snowy country which were not open to the public. At that moment, the man and the woman stood up and began to fight each other to see who would take Lu Fan. He clenched his fists tightly, started looking at her with an aggressive gaze, and upon seeing that the Northern Academy was willing to take Lu Fan, he decided not to stay behind. He told her that they could also offer the same conditions as them. Upon hearing this, the woman began pointing at him with her finger and decided to grant Lu Fan more access to additional secret realms. In response, the man decided to discuss the conditions again if Lu Fan was not satisfied, adding that he was willing to add even more. Seeing them arguing, Lu Fan became somewhat nervous. He did not expect this to happen during the interview. Now he was so confused that he didn't even know which academy to choose. The woman with purple hair began to look down at the ground and revealed to Lu Fan that the spots for this year's national test were going to be selected by Longdu Academy. This woman was Gu Han, the director of Longdu Academy. While she sat with her legs crossed and her arm resting on the chair's armrest, she reached out her hand towards Lu Fan and with a smile told him that the spot could be his. The man approached Gu Han, started staring at her, and despite not knowing if what she was saying was true or false, he reminded her again that even though Lu Fan was talented, he had just obtained the profession. He didn't know how he had the level to participate in the national test. The woman wearing a mask also approached her and explained to the others that previous candidates had gone through a rigorous selection process. She also added that other countries were already preparing themselves. She asked Guhan if they were really going to give such an important position to a newcomer. Everyone thought that the Northern Academy was treating the national test like a game. Upon hearing the name national test, Lu Fan started looking at them with a serious look and remained silent. Guhan began to stare at Lu Fan, and with a smile, she explained to everyone that the national test was a super space jointly built by the 23 countries around the world. Every 3 years, these 23 countries would send a competitor under 25 years old to represent their country in the national test of the superspace. In order to maintain the stability of the superspace, only new competitors were allowed and national-level experts were not permitted to participate. This was a test that attracted worldwide attention, and the rewards were very rare treasures. The woman wearing a mask turned her head towards Guhan, and with a surprised look, she asked her to commit herself and fulfill her duty since the next edition of the national test would begin in 6 months. The man also turned his head towards her and couldn't help but feel somewhat confused, thinking that the way Longdu Academy recruited students was a bit strange. Guhan put her hand under her chin, started looking at Lu Fan, and with a smile explained to the others that those who passed the trial had enough qualifications to become national-level experts. She also added that Longdu Academy could provide Lu Fan with the opportunity to obtain first place in the Dragon Realm. Upon hearing this, Lu Fan couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He began to look towards the ground, and with a surprised expression, he remembered that the national test not only allowed one to obtain more abundant rewards but also placed one among the truly strong. At that moment, a system window appeared to congratulate him for obtaining the treasure map. Upon seeing this, he remembered that it had been a long time since he had obtained a treasure map. Upon looking more closely, he saw that this map was also a divine level treasure map. He remembered that the last divine level map led him to find a black dragon egg. He stared fixedly at the system window and couldn't help but sweat and wonder if this map was the location of another dragon egg. Upon opening the map, he realized that the treasure was located in Longdu Academy, and it was in a safe zone. Upon seeing this, he decided to go to the academy to find the treasure. While Lu Fan was lost in his thoughts, Guhan caught his attention. She reached out her hand towards him and with a smile asked him how he felt about these conditions. She also added that this was the best that Longdu Academy could offer, and if he still wasn't satisfied, she could add some more conditions. Just before she could finish speaking, Lu Fan interrupted her and explained that he had already made up his mind. He put his hand on his waist, approached her, looked at her calmly, and with a joyful smile, decided to go to Longdu Academy. Upon hearing this, she couldn't help but look at Lu Fan and start smiling. Lu Fan also added that he had a condition. He asked her if she could help him apply for it. She agreed and added that as long as it wasn't too difficult, she would help him apply. 4 days later, Lu Fan and Han Ki packed their bags and left the bun shop. Lu Fan approached the entrance and closed the roll-up metal curtain. She started looking at Lu Fan and explained that she never expected that one day she would leave here. She put her hands on her abdomen, and with a sincere look, she explained to him that after living here for so many years, it was now really hard for her to leave. After closing the roll-up metal curtain of the bun shop, Lu Fan stood up, started dusting off his hands, slightly turned his head towards her and with a smile asked her not to worry since they now had a villa and plenty of savings, which meant they could live wherever. She reached out her hand towards him, and as she was starting to get excited, she began to imagine a young Lu Fan. She explained to him that she remembered when he had moved here, he was very little. She also added that time really passed by quickly. At that moment, Kin Kyu and her friend arrived at his aunt's bun shop in a convertible car. Kin Kyu stood up from the chair, greeted both of them, and with a smile told them that they had come here to pick them up. Xiaoman, who was driving the car with one hand, rested the other on the window, turned her head towards them and with a smile explained to Lu Fan that they were now also future students of Longdu Academy. She also asked both of them to accompany them as Xiao Q's family had rented a private plane. Han Ki closed her eyes and with a pleasant smile began greeting Kin Kyu. Seeing that they had also enrolled in Longdu Academy, Lu Fan couldn't help but smile and feel joyful. Xiaoman began to look at Lu Fan and explained to him that Kin Kyu and she had obtained the same grades. She had seen that Kin Kyu had enrolled in Longdu Academy for him, so she did the same. Upon seeing that she had told this to Lu Fan, Kin Kyu couldn't help but blush like a tomato. Han Ki placed her hand on her chest, and upon seeing that Lu Fan truly cared about her so much, she couldn't help but feel moved. This was something she had not expected at all. A few days ago, during the interview at Q Villa, Lu Fan reached out his hand to Gu Han and asked her to admit Han Ki into the academy since she possessed a rare and hidden profession called enchanting cook. She put her hand on her waist and with a serious look, she explained to him that this was possible. But the decision of whether she would be accepted or not would be made after she returned from the meeting. Han Ki closed her eyes, leaned on Lu Fan's shoulder, and couldn't help but cry. She had become a cook this year. A long time ago, she had told him that she dreamed of going to a prestigious academy like everyone else and she would like to experience it again. Back then, Lu Fan was very young. She didn't expect him to always remember what she had said. Lu Fan placed a hand on her shoulder, put the other one on his waist, and couldn't help but feel happy. With a smile, he asked his aunt not to cry. At that moment, Kin Q greeted her with a wave and asked her to get in the car quickly since time waits for no one. Upon hearing this, she closed her eyes and like a little girl, started running towards the car. Lu Fan simply picked up the suitcases, and as he watched his aunt slowly walk away, he couldn't help but feel an inner peace. Several hours later, they arrived at the airport. Kin Q grabbed Han Ki's shoulder and both started walking towards the plane. Lu Fan put his hands on his waist, turned his head towards them, and remembered that his aunt had worked hard for him. He recalled her discontent and disappointment after waking up to the worst profession. He decided to fulfill the promise that he would bring a better life for them. He was willing to achieve it at any cost. They boarded the private plane and several hours later arrived at Lu Fan's new beginning in the city of Longdu, located in the Dragon Realm. They arrived outside Longdu University. Han Ki began to look around and she thought that the capital was really different. Kin Q and Xiao Man started looking towards a side where they were selling rare recipes. Lu Fan placed his hand near his forehead, began to look towards the buildings, and remained silently observing them. At that moment, someone informed the princess that they had arrived. Upon hearing this, Lu Fan turned his head back and started wondering who this princess was. Upon seeing that they had finally arrived at the dragon's realm, the princess decided to get out of the car. Her assistant, Chui Hongtai, opened the car door and she began to step out. This princess was none other than Princess Jinju. As she got out of the car, she came face to face with Lu Fan, who was staring at her intently. Chen, who was standing next to the car with his arms behind his back, turned his body towards Lu Fan and began to stare at him intently. Chui Hongtai turned his body to the side and upon seeing Lu Fan, he was somewhat surprised. The princess got out of the car and started looking at Lu Fan with a disdainful gaze, simply remaining silent. Upon seeing the princess, Han Ki put her hand near her mouth, and she couldn't help but be shocked. Upon seeing that Jinju had come to Longdu Academy, with a serious look, Lu Fan thought that she was truly persistent like an evil spirit. Upon seeing that Lu Fan was indeed the Grand Master of Dragons in the city of Jianghai, Chen began to advance towards him and with a murderous look, decided to attack and save himself the trouble of searching for him. Upon seeing that Chen was ready to attack, Chui Hongtai panicked. He reached out towards him and with a shout, got his attention and asked him not to rush. Just before Chen could do something reckless, the princess approached him and put her hand in front of him to indicate that he should stop. She began to look at Lu Fan and explained to Chen that now was not the time because if they fought in front of the main entrance of the academy, he would be deported back to his country. Upon hearing this, Chen slightly turned his head towards her and with a serious look, apologized to her. Kin Q, who was behind Lu Fan, began to look at the princess and explained to the others that she remembered her father telling her that the princess had originally come to Longdu to study abroad. Upon seeing the princess here, she started wondering if she would also study at Longdu Academy. Xiao Man began to look at the princess and asked Kin Q what was happening. Upon seeing that Chen had come to fight, Lu Fan assumed an offensive stance and started staring at him with a contemptuous gaze. His aunt approached him, placed her hand on his chest, and upon seeing the princess, she couldn't help but panic. As the tension was starting to rise between them, someone approached them from behind and upon seeing that both groups had arrived just in time and together, asked them to come quickly. Upon hearing the voice, Lu Fan and his aunt turned their heads back and began to wonder who this person was. This person was none other than Gu Han. While she held some books in her hands, she started approaching them with a pleasant smile. She asked Lu Fan and Chen if they happened to know each other. They were both the first and second in the southern province, and both were dragon masters. Because of this, Longdu Academy had nicknamed them the Twin Stars of the South. Lu Fan turned his head towards her, and upon hearing that the second place winner in the southern province, Chen Tianjai, was also a dragon master, he couldn't help but be shocked. Chen began to stare at him aggressively, and in order not to appear suspicious to Gu Han, he greeted Lu Fan. Lu Fan turned his head towards him and with a serious look, started staring back at him and remained silent. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.